Welcome back to Up in the Blue Seats, our New York Rangers podcast from the New York Post, the first episode of 2023. Happy New Year. It's Jake Brown here alongside Rangers beat writer for the New York Post, Mollie Walker, with us, along with Andrew Hartz and our Hall of Famer. Larry Brooks is going to join us in just a little bit. We'll answer your subtext questions as well. A couple of Rangers wins, Molly, to start the new year, and a series that we'd all love to see in the playoffs once again happen on Tuesday night at the Garden. And what a game. You want to talk about puck luck and a couple lucky bounces going the Rangers' way, a couple lucky bounces going the Hurricanes' way. More went the Rangers' way. They win 5-3 at the Garden on Tuesday. Snap the Hurricanes' 11-game win streak. What a thriller. A couple through the wickets, a couple off the sticks. And on top of that, the other news of the day, the news of the hour as we record this on Wednesday, Jimmy Vesey back with the Rangers, a contract extension, 2 years, $800,000 a year. Looks like a bargain to me, Molly. Welcome back to the show. Happy New Year, and the floor is yours.
Happy New Year, everybody. Hope everybody enjoyed the holiday time. I guess we could start with the game against Carolina. Really good win. Really good win for the Rangers, a solid win. I was cracking up asking Artemi Panarin, by the third time that you guys tied the game, did you think to yourselves, like, all right, enough is enough? Like, let's stop giving up a goal seconds afterward. And he was like, yeah, I think three times was enough for us. But it's true. The third time around, they absolutely just buckled down. I think they were kind of just sick of that back and forth game. That's the way Keandre Miller described it. So it was a big game. I mean, Carolina was surging coming into this game. Not only an 11-game win streak, try an 18-game. If they won, it would have been an 18-game point streak. So 17 games in a row where they picked up at least a point. Hadn't had a regulation loss in weeks. So it was a big game. It was a divisional game. So for many reasons, it was a good win for the Rangers. And then, yeah, Jimmy Vesey, I mean, I feel like we've talked about him a lot on this show, just what an unbelievable season he's been having. And the impression that I've gotten from talking to Vesey, and I do hope to do a fun little feature on him in the next couple of weeks, especially in wake of this news that he's being extended for another 2 years. It's always been New York for Jimmy Vesey, I feel. And I'm going to dive into that and try to talk to some of the people who have been with him along the way. But the impression that I get is that New York is always where Jimmy Vesey wanted to be. So I think when he got his second chance to come and play for the Rangers again, he was not going to let the opportunity pass him by. And I also think that played a major role in his agreement to an $800,000 deal, because I don't know if to say he has leverage that he could ask for more, but he's been so solid for them, so reliable and versatile, and his contributions on the PK, he's been leapfrogging guys left and right for more special teams time. So I think that it was a good agreement for both parties, but I think for Jimmy Vesey, he's probably very thrilled. I know that a lot of the major points that a source said was why the deal worked out for both parties. Obviously, $800,000 gives them flexibility. He's a versatile bottom six guy who's just responsible defensively and like I said, so valuable on the penalty kill. His skill playing up and down the lineup, especially with the way Gerard Gallant mixes up these lines, he's just kind of almost like Barclay Goodrow in the sense that he can play with anybody and play well with them, which can't be said for all the combinations that the Rangers have had this season. And of course, he's a great teammate with a team first attitude. So really good deal for both parties. And it's always been New York for Jimmy Vesey.
Is there anything to him maybe of waiting? Because, $50,000 increase in a normal life role is great. Listen, New York Post, you want to give me an extra 50 grand right now? I'd love it. But 50 grand to a professional hockey player isn't, a boatload of cash. Anything to him maybe of waiting to the off season, maybe getting $950 or $1 million a year?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think he cared. Like, I think when the situation, I mean, I haven't gotten a chance to talk to him. I wasn't at practice on today on Wednesday. But from my conversations with him, I feel like once the deal was on the table, for any sort of possibility to stay in New York, Jimmy Vesey was going to take that. That's just the impression that I've gotten from him. I mean, he flat out told me one night after one of his big games that, it's always been New York for him. This is always where he's wanted to be. So I think that he would have, he was willing to get a deal done as soon as humanly possible if it meant that he could stay here.
That's my kind of guy. He's just, he loves a little American whiskey, a little Mustang Harry's after the game, maybe grab a few brews with the boys. So he just loves the bright lights in the big city. So maybe he would have got more money elsewhere, but it wouldn't be in the greatest city in the world. Well, Halak gets the Ranger a win on Sunday, Molly. We're off to a good new year. The Rangers will face the Devils this week, and then the classic NHL scheduling only face them one more time later in the season, Molly, and they'll face the Penguins 3 times in a week. Make that make sense. I just don't get it. I mean,
that's going to be fun.
It'll be a fun week, and then you won't see him again till 2027, of course. So the schedule, I mean, it's a continued topic of discussion, but quite bizarre. All right, do we want to go to subtext questions here before Larry Brooks joins us? We'll start with Lee Saravillo and Christopher Garvey. Is Ben Harpur the answer for the 6th defenseman spot?
Long-term answer, probably not. Short-term answer, of the 3 that the Rangers have had in that role so far this season, probably. Just in terms of the steadiness is the word that Gerard Gallant used when describing Ben Harpur. He's been steady. He's been solid. And I think for the 6th defenseman spot, that's really, especially how flaky it's been in the last couple of years. That's about all the Rangers could ask for at this point. And he brings a nice physical presence there with Braden Schneider. And they seem to play really well together. So I think that short term, definitely. If I'm thinking ahead to the trade deadline, if the Rangers would prioritize the 6th defenseman role over a forward, I don't think so. Just because I think they definitely need more reinforcements up front than they do on the back end. Because I mean, Harper and Schneider have been pretty good for a third pair. So I just think it's really interesting how he's leapfrogged both Zach Jones and Libor Hajek. I mean, I really feel for Libor Hajek. I think the way Larry phrased it in one of his articles was same time next year for Libor Hajek. He was in the exact same kind of role last season. Barely saw the ice, played like a career low amount of games combined between the NHL and AHL, which is just super unfortunate. And Gerard Gallant even said at the beginning of the season that he didn't want what happened to Libor Hajek to happen again this season. But yet here we are. So it's an unfortunate situation for Libor Hajek, but I think Ben Harpur has earned the spot. And it's kind of his to lose. And he had a really interesting story. If you didn't read my article from my conversation with him, you can go check it out. He had another PTO with the Blue Jackets earlier on this offseason, and it just didn't go well. He got in a fight in his first preseason game and was off the ice for 2 weeks. And by the time that he got back, Columbus was already solidifying their lineup and he wasn't a part of it. So he didn't really get a fair shot. So he kind of took a risk signing a PTO with the Hartford Wolfpack. So yeah, so that's Ben Harpur.
Lesson learned. Don't fight in preseason. The games don't matter.
He got knocked out cold. Injury. It was not good.
Yeah, screw that. All right. Frank Rothman wants to know, will Alexis LaFreniere be traded at the deadline? General manager Molly Drury.
No. I no. I would be pretty shocked if that happened. Just because I think it's still too early to come to conclusions on Alexis Lafreniere, and the last thing that the Rangers want to do with any of their young talent is dealing him away and then letting him flourish somewhere else. So I do expect Alexis Lafreniere to still be on the Rangers past the trade deadline.
Yeah, I mean, you're also not going to get a ton for him if you do it now, so you want to get his value up a little bit. All right, last one. Can you rank Filipino, Alexis Lafreniere, Capo Caco, and Keandre Miller in order of priority of the Rangers needing to keep? Brandon Goodnow wants to know.
Number one's easily Keandre Miller. I think we've talked about this before on here. Just, players like Keandre Miller don't come along so often, and a top 4 defenseman role is all he's ever known. And the role that he plays on the Rangers D Corps is just not something that could be easily replaced. So hands down, Keandre Miller would have to be up there. The next 3, I kind of struggled between 2 and 3. But I got to go with Capo Caco. I think that the deciding factor there for me was that Filip Chytil's durability isn't always the best. Even though, I mean, Caco's not always healthy either, but I think Chytil more so struggles with injuries. And I also do think Capo Caco has taken tremendous strides this season. I mean, sometimes I watch what he does in the offensive zone with the puck, and the way that he is now A, calling for the puck, B, having the puck on his stick and reaching his arm out to push guys away from him. He's just playing with a whole different aura to him. And I think that the Rangers absolutely need to see that through. And then I would say Filip Chytil, and then just going off what these guys have shown us in their time with the Rangers, I got to have Alexis Lafreniere number 4. I still do think that the Rangers want to prioritize keeping him. But in my eyes, I think Capo Caco and Filip Chytil have just been a lot more important to the Rangers during their time in New York.
I guess a bunch of general questions are asking about Vitali Kravtsov's play.
Yeah, lots of questions on that, and rightfully so, because I think we're all thinking the same thing when we're watching this guy. The skill is there. Against Carolina on Tuesday night, he had one of those crazy, puck between the legs to evade the defender moves, but he didn't do anything with it. So, and I think that's almost a microcosm of Vitali Kravtsov so far this season. Is he'll make a high skilled play like that, but it doesn't really do anything. But it doesn't come at a time that it allows anything to really come to fruition, or even generates a scoring chance. I think that the skill is there. There's no doubt. It's just the question of whether or not he's able to use it to impact the game positively. And I just haven't seen that quite yet. But I also think that he hasn't had enough time to really show that either. So I think the verdict is still out. But that being said, I still do have a question, many questions. I'm not really sure about him yet being a full-time NHLer, but that also could be attributed to him just still figuring it out, which is valid as well. But I am also questioning Vitali Kravtsov's play.
Everyone is questioning Vitali right now. Well, no one's questioning the Rangers, who are 21-12-6, and all of a sudden entering Wednesday just a point behind the Devils. I mean, the Devils were rocking the world just like a couple of weeks ago. Now they have come down to life, and the Rangers will go to New Jersey. You'll be in your backyard on Saturday at 1:00. I assume you'll be there. Have some mom's cooking for dinner maybe after the game.
No, I actually I'm gonna make the commute from the city and see how that goes for me. But
all right, so no matzo ball soup after the Prudential Center trip.
No, unfortunately not.
That's unfortunate. Everyone loves a good bowl of matzo ball soup, including Larry Brooks, who will join up in the blue seats next. All right, Molly, now let's welcome in our Hall of Famer, Larry Brooks. Follow him on Twitter at NYP_Brooksy. We'll do some subtext questions with Larry in just a little bit. But Larry, I think you called it. I think you deserve all credit for the Jimmy Vesey contract extension. You wrote about it on Saturday. 4 days later, it has happened. Has this happened before? Like, have you wrote things and then they happen? Are you Nostradamus?
No, I'm just waiting for my 3% from.
So, what's your overall thoughts on the deal? It seems like they got him for a little TJ Maxx bargain here.
No, it is an important signing for them. It's extremely valuable to have a player who you can rely on, who is playing at under $1 million, and Jimmy's coming in at $800,000 for each of the next 2 years. with the cap situation, it's imperative that the Rangers have players at that price who they can rely on. And he's come here for the second time now, and he's a remade player. He's a remade person. He's a role player. Remember when he signed as a coming out of Harvard as a free agent, who at least 20 teams were chasing. The expectations were that he was going to be a top 6 guy. He was going to score 25, 30 goals. He was going to be a linchpin. And, he was okay when he was here for his first 3 years. Scored 17 and 18, I think. But he never quite met those expectations. And the Rangers were running into cap issues even back then. It's kind of been a constant with them. And so he moved on. They traded him to Buffalo, and he's become a bottom 6 player who can play that role extremely well. He's become a penalty killer, a checker. He can chip in with the offense, moves up and down the lineup. He's a coach's dream, actually, and so it's an important signing for them. It's not a sexy one, but it's the kind of signing that championship teams or contending teams make, and this was a good one for them. They got on it quickly, so I give the general manager and the player and the post.
I was gonna say, you got to make sure you cash in on that 3%. Just ask Jimmy. All right, what's my cut?
When guys are kind of, in the past, I've joked with guys where they talk about how negative articles have have spurred them on, and so I just asked them where my compensation is, where the playoff money is. But I guess the checks have been in the mail for a few years.
Yeah, just must have gotten lost.
Yeah.
All right, moseying on over to some subtext questions. We've got this one from William Humphreys. With the emergence of K'Andre Miller and Braden Schneider, what can the Rangers do cap-wise to be able to pay them? You can't allocate $30 million to 4 defensemen, and they are already at $19 million with Jacob Trouba and Adam Fox.
Yeah, it's going to be tricky. I think everyone can see the challenges ahead. It's going to be tricky, and what I'm looking at is
I'm thinking of Ryan Lindgren.
Well, yes.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Ryan Lindgren. What the Rangers are
going to have to look at is how they can keep Ryan Lindgren.
Yeah.
Because he is such an important player. He's got one more year on his deal coming up after this. It's hard to see how it's all going to fit. It honestly is how they're going to keep them all now. K'Andre, there was a silver lining to Miller's kind of slow start, and that was that his price on his next deal was going to be lower. Mm-hmm. Now, the way he's coming, that may not be the case. He's going to be in a very, very strong bargaining position, except for the fact that he really has no systemic leverage unless someone comes after him on an offer sheet, and that's such a rare animal in the NHL. But it's going to be a fair deal too. What that means is K'Andre Miller coming in at 4 on a shorter deal? Is he going to be looking for 6.5 on a longer deal, or 7 on a longer deal? I don't know. But if K'Andre gets up to the 6 million part, then it complicates things. And LaFreniere is coming up on a second deal. Obviously, he's playing up front, but the cap number is incorporates both. They are going to have real challenges. They're not going to be able to keep everybody. They're going to have hard decisions to make, and that's the situation. They're going to be faced with some serious situations. Of course, in a couple of years, the no move clauses begin to disappear. Like Kreider's no move disappears, and Trouba's no move disappears, and I think that's probably where the Rangers are going to look in a couple of years in order to be able to keep K'Andre Miller and LaFreniere and Kakko and all the younger players needing new deals, they're going to have to start to cut the guys or move the guys whose no move clauses expire in a couple of years. So that's just the hard reality. It is. It's going to be a very hard reality when the Rangers face the decision on whether to keep or deal Chris Kreider. It's going to be tough. But there's a lot of time between now and then. There are a lot of things that can play out, and I'm sure it's a volatile situation because circumstances change every day. But anyone who sees a challenge ahead is correct, because it's going to be very difficult. The other what I've referred to for a couple of years is these, the Rangers have a pretty open window to a certain extent, but it's also defined by Shesterkin's contract, who has just a couple more years after this, right? So that's going to be another one. I mean, they're getting Shesterkin at under $6 million right now, right? I think.
Yep.
So that next deal is going to be a major deal.
Yeah.
So there are just so many decisions ahead that it would actually benefit everybody if they could win the cup in the next year or two.
Right. Wouldn't it be?
And then the decisions, would be made under different backdrop. And so that's why there is a kind of a sense of urgency here to get the best out of the kids, and Panarin and Kreider and Trouba and Zibanejad, who are, all coming up on 30 or over 30. So a long answer to an appropriate question: how are the Rangers going to keep all their players? And the answer is they're not going to be able to.
On to the next. This one is from Michael Silvers and Edward Weir. The MillerTrouba pair has given up the most goals in the league, I believe. Any thoughts on whether Gerard Gallant should try something different, like splitting them up?
Well, I think the question is, is it time for Braden Schneider to move up? Is it time for Schneider to get those minutes, to get some of Trouba's minutes, to play Miller with Schneider? Braden Schneider's had a terrific start to his career, but he's also been sheltered as a third pair defenseman. He's moved up a few times this year. He can handle himself, I think, against anybody. So I think if the Miller-Trouba pair is going to be split, it's going to be to give Schneider more minutes and to give him more responsibility. Last night against Carolina, the MillerTrouba was on for, the pair were on for all three. Goals against, not necessarily their fault, but they had cut down their goals against over the last 2 or 3 weeks. So they have been on for, I think, the most goals, or the second most goals of any pair in the NHL. But a lot of that was over the first 6 weeks. It's been actually pretty stable the last 2-3 weeks. So we'll see where that goes. But the question is how to give Braden Schneider more responsibility and to kind of spoon feed him a little bit more responsibility. And I think you'll see that over the second half. Whether that's a complete revamping of the pairs, whether he moves up, whether it's just on occasion, I don't know. But I would expect Schneider to get some more minutes, and I would expect Trouba's workload to be decreased as the Rangers look to the playoffs if they're in a spot, because it's going to be a grind for him. It's going to be a grind for Trouba the way he plays. So I'd like to see more minutes for Braden Schneider. I don't think he plays quite enough now, but I understand that Gallant and Gord Murphy are being careful with him. But I think you can, I think you can give him a little bit more.
And last one from Anthony Labella. What do you think the team's weaknesses are, and who would be good trade deadline targets to fill those gaps?
Well, I just don't think listen, I think they face a lot of the same issues as they did last year, in that I'm not sure that they're big and strong enough to get to the net in the playoffs. And that's actually what I was watching against Tampa. and watching against Carolina specifically, whether they were going to be able to get to the net, whether they're going to be able to defend well enough in front. And I think they really have challenges there. It's interesting. They brought in Ryan Reeves last year, and Reeves is now gone. They brought in Sammy Blais, and Blais, after his injury, is really not much of a factor. They had Dryden Hunt, who was, more of a forecheck physical guy last year, and he's not here. So a lot of the remodeling that took place and the emphasis on bringing in more physical players and bringing in more sandpaper has kind of been replaced again by, Kravtsov is not a physical player, and he's up there, and LaFreniere, they're not a very physical team. And I just look at them and wonder whether they are going to be strong enough in the playoffs, because I think one of the questions of the season is, and not only for the Rangers, I think, this is a question for the NHL, and a question that every team is going to have to confront, is we know that the season is all about, is generally about skill. That's what it is. The league showcases skill, and you can see there are more goals, there are more highlight goals, there are more chances. It's an offense-driven regular season. But if we switch over to the playoffs, where referees don't call anything, and the bigger teams are allowed to are allowed to mug the more talented players, and interference is not being called, and cross checks are not being called, and it just becomes a mosh pit in front of the net, then not only the Rangers, but kind of, like, I've been thinking about the Devils all year. The Devils are a skill team, and suddenly they thrive on regular season skill. Is that going to be shut down, not necessarily by the opponents, but by the league? What kind of a playoffs does the league want to have? Because they control it. There's no question about it. So I think the Rangers need to bulk up. And I know, there's a need probably for a right wing in the top six, maybe. There's time for this to play out. There's about 7 weeks to the trade deadline. So there's a lot, there's a lot of information to be gained in the next couple of months. But while the Rangers may need a top six right wing, a guy who can score, I think they need more traditional, big bodies and hard bodies, and they need to be harder to play against. And they may need a more physical, although Ben Harpur has been a little more physical the last week. I think that, they may be looking for a more physical, bigger, third pair defenseman on the left side to play. So I look for them to try and bulk up again. I'm not sure that they're going to be able to do that, because they don't really adhere to the philosophy of having a checking line. Mm-hmm. So I would be looking for a guy like, and it may be redundant because they have Trocheck and they have Hedel, but I would be looking maybe for a guy like Ryan O'Reilly, who can just anchor, and you play him with Barclay Goodrow, and you've got 2/3 of a really tough two-way checking line. I remember when they signed Goodrow, I was thinking, I don't really understand where this fits, because they're going to have to build a third line around him as a checking unit. But Gallant doesn't believe in checking lines. Mm-hmm. I remember the first time I talked to him last year, in the off season, and I was asking him about his, about checking lines, and he said, no, I want to have 3 scoring lines, and you can see that's the way he coaches.
Yep.
He coaches. He wants skill on his third line. He's not looking for a shutdown line. And when I was watching again Carolina last night, there again, there's Stahl, and there's Fost, and then there's Martin playing on the left side instead of Niederreiter, and they're out against the Rangers' top guys, and the Rangers don't have an equivalent. Mm-hmm. They just don't, and that's not how they've constructed their team. I think they'd be a better playoff team if they did have a checking line, but that would involve a lot of moving parts over the season, and we haven't seen anything yet from Drury that indicates that he believes that they need a checking line too. So we don't know. That's my traditional belief, that you should have a checking line. that teams should have shutdown lines.
Mm-hmm.
And the Rangers have a guy in Goodrow who fits perfectly.
Right.
But he's all over the place. And it really is interesting that their best team might have Goodrow as their fourth line center, but he contributes so much more when he's in the top 6 and top 9 than when he's getting 9 minutes on the fourth line. So I get what Gallant says. Everybody wants him on the fourth line, but all he does is make everybody better. It's true. He's been one of the best players. He has been one of their best players this year. There's no question about
100%.
He's been very valuable. He's been productive. He fills any role. And sometimes that's overlooked because, again, you're kind of dazzled by the skill. You want Kravtsov to play. You need LaFreniere has to play, obviously. Hedl, his minutes have dwindled again the last couple of games, which is kind of depressing a little bit. No, it is, because you see them take steps and then they go back, and they take steps and then they go back, and suddenly Hedl's playing 9 minutes, after he's at 17. So they're trying to fit in all the skill, but you also want to be able to play Goodrow a lot of minutes too. So, and I there's a lot for them to figure out, but as they're figuring it out, they've gone 10-2-1. So,
right.
And so it's been a very, very good last 3 or 4 weeks. They still have a lot of questions. I think the burden of proof is still on them, but the fact that they've been able to, beat Carolina, play well against Tampa, beat the Islanders, play well in Pittsburgh when the Penguins were rolling, I think they're finding their stride. I don't think by any means this is a finished product, but I think they're beginning to find their stride a little bit. I think they're playing with a little more confidence. I think they have more confidence in each other after a really tough opening 6 weeks or so where nothing really went smoothly for them. And I think they were expecting a little smoother ride. I don't think they expected as bumpy a ride as they got out of the gate, but they've turned it around. But they're in a battle. Listen, a bad week for any team in that division, and suddenly
detrimental.
That team is looking up.
Yep.
So and there's always danger lurking. That's that's the way I that's my half, my cup half empty,
half full. Yeah.
Or empty for 25 years, actually. 27 again, 28. But there's always danger lurking. Suddenly it's like, well, they're in Montreal. Well, they've got to beat Montreal. You can't lose. You can't lose in Montreal, right? Then they've got this game against New Jersey, and that's a big game. So they're all big games, and it's been a frustrating year, I think, for the Rangers. It's been a frustrating year for Ranger fans, but you can kind of enjoy this playoff race too. It's not that they're playing badly and they're stuck in this race. They're playing well and they're in this race. And just about every team has had their spurts where they've played extremely well. I mean, look at the Devils. They're now fighting for their playoff lives after their first 6 weeks. The Islanders have played pretty well this year. They're not assured of anything. The Caps have been terrific over the last, 3-4 weeks. They're not assured of anything. So, it's going to be an interesting second half of the season. It is, and it should be fun.